Rules Committee come to order, and thank you very much for joining us today. We normally do, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we do our work, most of our best work at night. Today is during the day, and I know that a lot of members are busy, and so we're going to go ahead and try and get started as close to time as we can. And I'm delighted that you're here. And by the way, you're joined, Mr. Chairman, by one of our key members, Jared Polis. So we'll remember that home court advantage is still to both of you guys. Today, the Rules Committee will have two pieces of legislation, H.R. 538 and 702. H.R. 538, the Native American Energy Act, would facilitate the development of energy on tribal lands by reducing federal regulations that impede development of those lands. It's a jobs bill. This bill streamlines and standardizes duplicative federal processes for energy development and empowers tribes to develop more of their own natural resources that would be for the benefit of the American consumer and for tribal members. H.R. 702 would repeal Section 103 of the Energy Policy and Conservation Act of 1975 and prohibit any restriction on the export of crude oil except under emergency authority by the President. America's energy renaissance has created the opportunity for the United States to become the global energy superpower. But our own self-imposed ban on U.S. crude oil exports is restricting America's ability to provide and to utilize our natural resources and to help our foreign policy so that we can aid and help our allies as necessary around the globe. This bill would add billions of dollars to our economy, 1 million jobs, lower our trade deficit, enhance our energy security, and provide our allies with opportunities to buy crude oil from the United States instead of some of their adversaries. Makes a lot of sense. With us to testify today is former Rules Committee long-term member, and I'm sure he doesn't want to be associated that way, but Chairman Rob Bishop. Mr. Bishop, we're delighted that you're back with us. We know you went to Natural Resources to become its chairman, and we're really proud of what you've done and what you're doing. We're delighted to have you today. We're going to have you join the dais as you choose. Testifying also will be a Rules Committee member from Colorado, Jared Polis. We're also joined today by one of our favorite members who is from Alaska, who is for this bill, the gentleman Don Young, former chairman of many committees, T&I, Natural Resources, and a stalwart to this body, and we appreciate all three of you being here. Before we get started, I'd like to defer to the gentleman from Florida if he'd like to make any opening statement. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to the testimony. I will have an opportunity to present other views on the floor tomorrow, so I'll reserve a lot of commentary here.
Thank you very much, Judge Hastings. The committee is glad to have you here. As you all know, anything you have in writing will be entered in the record. We'd appreciate if you leave it for our awesome stenographer who is here with us today. I'm going to go first, if I can, and get Mr. Bishop to introduce this bill, the young chairman of the Natural Resources Committee. Remembering, Rob, you got to talk well into that microphone for us to hear. You've been on this dais before, and the gentleman's recognized.
Well, thank you, I think. You moved up quickly here. You used to be down at the bottom of this row here. It's good to see so many of you here today. Look, when it comes to Native Americans, not all revenue for Native Americans comes through gaming. Some of them, especially the tribes in my state, are prohibited from using that, but each of them does have some natural resources that are there, both as far as mining potential as well as agricultural potential. Unfortunately, even though when we talk about Native Americans, often we give some good lip service, even titles, people who have significant titles give lip service as to why we want to empower them to make their own decisions and allow them to chart their own destiny, of course. We then put restrictions on that kind of ability. And indeed, when we're dealing with trust lands or reservation lands, oftentimes they have to deal with not only the entities like EPA and Department of Interior, but also a very paternalistic Bureau of Indian Affairs, which adds additional regulations. What this bill attempts to do is simply say, look, this is an opportunity for some of our people who live in areas that don't have a lot of resource, that don't have a lot of revenue right now, to develop their revenue, either in agriculture or in mining activities. And if they do that, let's give them a chance to do that by streamlining the process, reducing some of the redundancy that only they face, and make it so that we put some limitations so decisions can be made. If they're going to make an application or appraisal, put a time limit on there where they have to get that application and appraisal back. If somebody's going to provide comments or being sued, make sure that they are somebody who is legitimately and specifically impacted by them, and allow our Native Americans to actually have the same kind of opportunity to develop their sources of revenue, their future, their vision of what goes on, and allow them to do it in the best way possible. This is what this bill attempts to do. We have had, I think Mr. Young has introduced this bill myriad times. Something very similar was passed by the House last time, but was not taken up by the Senate. It's a new Senate over there that I think is ginned up to be ready to accept this and move forward with it. This is a chance not just to say we care about Native Americans, but actually give them the tools that they want, they need, and for which they have requested, which is why most of the Native American tribes are actually supporting this type of effort. It actually does empower them. So it's more than just lip service like we want to be nice. It gives them the tools so that they can chart their future destiny. We're going to have some other bills that will affect them coming up here as well, but this is the first coming in a way that I think it's a great bill. I hope you will favorably report it out with the least amount of problem amendments attached to it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Chairman Young, welcome to the Rules Committee. We're delighted that you're here, and in particular that you're bringing a bill to us today from our northern frontier of a great state that as long as it doesn't melt, it'll keep being a lot bigger than Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. HR 538 has been in the works for several years. This is not, something that just happened overnight. I've been involved in it. The provisions are a result of oversight hearings and tribal consultation. I keep saying tribal consultation. The bill streamlines federal permitting for and increases tribal control over energy and other natural resources development on Indian lands. It gives tribes options to perform appraisals of their land and prohibits the Interior Department's hydraulic fracturing from applying to Indian lands without the consent of the tribe. It also contains provisions to streamline judicial review and deter frivolous lawsuits concerning federal permitting for Native American energy projects. The judicial review provisions are crucial for Alaska Natives whose ability to develop their land claims, settlement lands, have been abused by special interest groups filing lawsuits from outside. This is lands given by this Congress to Alaska Natives, now being interfered by outside interest groups. The bill also authorized a pilot project for the Navajo Nation to handle mineral leasing of its trust lands if Interior approves this tribal leasing program. A little bit further than I like to have it going, and the Interior Department, frankly, has done a miserable job. Finally, HR 538 promotes tribal forest stewardship contracted on federal lands adjacent to Indian reservations to provide a fuel supply for biomass and energy generation, and managing timber as it should be managed, not to dismanage it like the Forest Service is doing now. This summer, Mr. Chairman, this summer, the GAO issued a report called Indian Energy Development Poor Management by BIA, and it has hindered energy development on Indian lands. And here are just a couple of highlights of the study, which is a very interesting study. The BIA does not have comprehensive data to identify ownership and resources available for development, does not have a document process or data to track or monitor its review of its response times, and some offices do not have skills or adequate staff resources to effectively review energy-related documents. In 2012, Interior Inspector General found that the weakness in BIA management of oil and gas resources contributed to a general preference by industry to acquire oil and gas leases on non-Indian lands. This is a good bill, Mr. Chairman, and give you an example of what I'm saying in the Dakotas during the big boom. It took 15 permits on a reservation and 2 off reservation because of the lack of the Interior Department. And we keep talking about self-determination, self-decision, nation to nation. It's all lip service. There's 56 million acres of land that are owned by American Indians in the lower 48, 44 million acres of land and owned by Alaskan natives, bigger than the state of Washington and half of Oregon. And yet, they're being precluded from developing their resources for the benefit of their people. And we have conditions within the reservations that is beyond anyone's imagination, primarily because I call it the Progressive Party's attitude is don't get too smart, behave yourself, and we'll give you half a beef and a blanket. And no opportunity to improve their lot. This bill is the first tiny step forward to allow them to have the real government relationship developing their industries without the heavy hand of the government saying, don't get too smart. This is a good bill. It's supported by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Congress of American Indians, the Intertribal Tribal Timber Council, the Navajo Nation, it's Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, the South Ute Tribe in Colorado, Confederate Tribes of the Colville Reservation, the Ute Tribe, and 3 affiliated tribes of the Fort Belfold Reservation in North Dakota. To my knowledge, there's no tribes that oppose this. If we really want to help the First Americans, we will pass this legislation overwhelmingly. Mr. Chairman, I hope as you look at mischievous amendments that might be offered from those that oppose this, again, are not living up to the talk. They're trying to stop the advancement of the American Indian. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We're delighted that you're here today, and your words were very succinct. Mr. Polis, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here representing the Democrats on the Natural Resources Committee. The Democrats on the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Grijalva and Mr. Ruiz, strongly believe in the sovereignty of our First Nations. I join them in that regard. And we are critical of this very selective version of sovereignty where it seems like Republicans support a sovereignty of convenience on issues that fit their political agenda. In this case, gutting environmental regulations, in other cases, gutting labor regulations. As part of a broader package in support of Native American sovereignty, Democrats would be supportive of increased energy sovereignty. Unfortunately, by both separating out as well as including several poison pill provisions in this bill, severely threatens its bipartisan support. This bill attempts to solve a problem that doesn't exist by limiting judicial review of energy development decisions on Indian land and preventing the recovery of attorney's fees in energy-related cases. This legislation will keep legitimate claims from being brought by victims of environmental disaster, including Native American victims of environmental disaster, simply because they lack financial resources. H.R. 538 is opposed by the President, as well as by many environmental and conservation groups. I have a letter that I'd like to submit to the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Some of the groups that have expressed opposition are the Alaska Wilderness League, Center for Biological Diversity, Defenders of Wildlife, Earth Justice, Green Latinos, the Lands Council, League of Conservation Voters, National Parks Conservation Association, National Resource Defense Council, Northern Alaska Environmental Center, San Juan Citizens Alliance, Sierra Club, Western Environmental Law Center, and the Wilderness Society, and they go into the details of the reasons with regard to their letter. There is also a glaring loophole in this in this bill, in Section 5, where the EPA waiver process essentially, the rule around the going through the EPA review, NEPA process, applies on non-Indian land when a tribe partners with an energy company to develop natural resources anywhere in the United States. Effectively, this means that all an oil and gas company has to do to go around the NEPA process is to partner with a tribe solely for the benefit of skirting NEPA and profiting from restricting the judicial review process, creating an enormous loophole that can lead to virtually unregulated development. Now, I know that many of the proponents of this bill, including the chair and former chair of the committee, are critical of the NEPA process as a whole. And I think there is a sensible, common sense, bipartisan way forward on making the NEPA process more efficient. However, a backdoor attempt that provides energy companies with a way to go completely around NEPA, not even on Native American land, is simply a way to effectively eliminate NEPA without saying so, and not what I would view as a sincere attempt to restore tribal sovereignty and respect our First Nations. Those are some of the reasons that I join the committee Democrats in opposition to this bill, and I yield back for any questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all three of you being here. Mr. Chairman Young, I'm from Dallas, Texas. We noticed that gasoline was $1.99 a gallon just a week ago. When I was back this weekend, I could find it as high as $2.12 and a little bit more. Boy, that beats the stuffings out of $3.74 and $3.90. We were told that America, by lots of presidents, including Jimmy Carter, we were out of energy, just out of it. We just have to face this. The world is going to have to change. Well, I think we have changed. We've become more energy efficient. We've adapted ourselves. We've done a lot of things. But what you're trying to do here today is to help a group of people who you represent who want the opportunity to use their natural resources also. Would this help America and gasoline at the pump?
Well, I think it'll help. I know it'll help America, and I listened to the gentleman from Colorado's comments. I do have an amendment. I didn't bring it up in my testimony because I think the basic bill is a good bill. But we have changed it to somewhat concords NEPA, like mineral lease and approval in Indian lands. It has to have an agency, must consider the comments by local people. But as far as helping America, anytime we have energy developed, anytime we have an abundance of energy is what's made this nation great. We become a greater nation. One of the reasons I'm irritated with the president and his mission suggestions, he forgets the less fortunate, the inability to have new jobs or create new jobs. Power creates jobs. It always has. You know, 50% of the world doesn't have electricity, and that's the impoverished part of the world because there's no energy. And we've been blessed with abundance of energy. If we want to continue to grow in this country, make ourselves the greatest nation in the world again, and I say again because we're slipping, we will have a surplus of energy. With that, you create new wealth and new jobs. So this will help out. The most thing, keep in mind, we talk about self-determination. We're all for self-determination. They're not, because this gives them the ability economically to be self-determined. If you don't have the wherewithal to create your own energy and create your own wealth, you're never, ever not going to be independent. It won't happen. So this is a good bill for that purpose. But I'm trying to help a specific group of people that have been mistreated. We give them the largest deal from the government, but we don't help them, and we don't help this nation at all. We hold them back. I'm trying to keep that from happening. That's why I support this bill.
Chairman Bishop, there's a common theme out there that free people make better decisions. It's your own land, it's your own resources, it's your own ideas, it's your own discretion, it's your own ability to make what you choose. It's part of states' rights, it's part of a lot of things, but this is seemingly about self-determination and somebody being able to take control over what they love the most, their own backyard. Does it also include that thought process, what we're doing here?
Yeah, more so than ever before. As I said earlier, and as I think we've all said, there are a lot of people who like to give lip service to the idea that we want our Native Americans to have control of their own destiny, and yet we put restrictive and duplicative regulations upon them that no other group has to go through. That's why I'm glad the chairman of the subcommittee is coming about his amendment to clarify the NEPA alleged loophole that's in there, because it's not a loophole. It's just a matter of how many actual reviews do you have to have before you make a decision, and why should an Indian tribe have to go through more than anybody else? So it doesn't do anything to mitigate what those issues are. It simply says there's some common sense ways of going about doing it, and this is what we need to do. That's why the Native Americans are actually supportive of this, because it gives them the ability of being empowered, and that's what we ought to be doing.
Well, I agree. Thank you. Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins does not seek time. Mr. Byrne? Gentleman from Alabama does not seek time. Judge Hastings? Judge Hastings does not seek time. Well, I've used my time well. Mr. Polis, I want to thank you for taking time. It's a lot of fun getting down there and joining this panel. You joined two great men, and your message was well understood, and we appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, Bishop, thank you for taking time to be here. Chairman Young, please do come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you saying.
Yes, sir.
God bless.
Is there any other member that seeks to give testimony on H.R. 538, the Native American Energy Act? Seeing none, this will now close the hearing portion of H.R. 538. The committee would now be prepared and move its attention to H.R. 702 to adopt to changing crude oil market conditions. And we have the distinguished former chairman of the the distinguished chairman, one of my colleagues from Ennis, Texas, who is here. We would expect others to join Chairman Barton as they come in. We will move to them. We would anticipate hearing today from the Honorable Bobby Rush from Illinois and the Honorable Gene Green from Texas. And I would like to make sure that we do understand that we're going to go ahead and keep going, or do we need to delay for a minute to find out about Mr. Green or Mr. Rush?
And Mr. Cuellar, I would hope.
If Mr. Cuellar is going to join us, I did not show he was here, but that was not a surprise to me. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cuellar, I do not see. When the gentleman, Mr. Cuellar, arrives, I'm sure the gentleman, Mr. Ryan Thompson, who is his able friend, would make sure that he joins us, and we'll make sure that that happens. Mr. Thompson, thank you for being here today. If you'll please make sure Mr. Green gets here, that he knows he should join us also. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We've already talked about your bill, the importance of it, and we're delighted that you're here. Without objection, anything you have ready will be entered the record, and the gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, and thank the members of the Distinguished Rules Committee on both sides of the aisle. I'm happy to be here to support a rule for H.R. 702, which is a bill that would repeal the ban on crude oil exports, which was initially enacted in 1975. My original sponsor is Congressman Cuellar of Texas, so it is a bipartisan bill, and I believe we have 16 or 17 Democrat co-sponsors of the bill. So we've worked very hard to make it bipartisan. In the 1970s, we were importing 2/3 of our oil. We had just had an Arab oil embargo in 1973. And so at that time, the President and the Congress decided to restrict exports of any products, both crude oil and refined products. Passed a law that did that. Since that time, the Congress has repealed the section on refined products, but has left in place the ban on crude oil exports. Then and now are two different economic situations. Today, we are the second largest oil producer in the world. We have crude oil. We have the capability to be number one. We were briefly number one last year, but with the collapse in oil prices, our production has begun to decline because these hydraulically fractured, horizontally drilled wells produce very magnificently in the beginning, and then they decline very rapidly. Since we've shut our rig count down and we're not drilling new wells, the production is beginning to decline. Last month, it went down about 300,000 barrels per day here in the United States. As prices have collapsed and the rig count has gone down, the job situation has deteriorated. In the last 6 months, we've lost 38,000 direct jobs in the oil industry, and we estimate the multiplier effect of that is in the hundreds of thousands. Those are people that were working a year ago. They're not working today. There are people that had well-paying jobs that are now having to go on relief and get food stamps and things like this. H.R. 702 would repeal, on date of enactment, the ban on crude oil exports. It would create an open, transparent market, willing buyer, willing seller, and we expect that production would come back, not maybe immediately, but within 6 months. We expect that hundreds of thousands of jobs would be created. There is one estimate that estimates up to 1 million jobs in the next 3 to 4 years, but on a permanent basis, order of magnitude about 400,000 permanent jobs would be created. Impact on the economy would be in the billions of dollars annually over a 10-year period, the trillions of dollars. So it would be an economic boon. From a strategic standpoint, it would make U.S. oil competitive with the Saudis and the Russians. It would give our president an economic tool that he or she could use as opposed to a military tool that would have to be used. We think that that in terms of opposition to the bill, there's only 2 groups that have opposed it in a significant extent. Some of the refiners have opposed it, and some of the environmental groups have opposed it. But we have over 100 trade associations, including the U.S. Chamber and the Business Roundtable, that have supported it. Some unions have endorsed it. We think this is a win-win for the American people, and we would hope to pass the bill, send it to the Senate, and have them pass it, and give the American people a Christmas present this Christmas. With that, Mr. Chairman, submit my statement and be happy to take questions from anybody.
Chairman, thank you very much. I've always thought that a country that had necessary resources could protect itself and work from a position of strength. We've seen where this also, while you did not specifically refer to it, I think we found ourselves in a position last year or a year before, when we had to deal with the Russian-Ukrainian issue, that we realized that perhaps the frailty of some of our laws inhibited our ability to help some of our friends. I mean, forget the trade aspect and the jobs and the money. We're talking about helping freedom, helping free people, our allies. Do you think this would have any consequence to what I would call international affairs?
I think so, but really what I think is not as important as what the international community thinks. We had testimony before the Energy and Commerce Committee where the ambassador from the Czech Republic, speaking only for the Czech Republic, but a view that has been shared by many other countries, supports the removal of the ban on crude oil exports. The Czech ambassador indicated that the 2 refineries in the Czech Republic would love to receive oil from the United States. Currently, they get most of their oil from Russia, and some of it from the Middle East. We also have gotten comments from the Polish government, the Ukrainian government, a number of the Central European countries that are dependent on Russian oil and or OPEC oil have said that they would at least like to have the option of purchasing from the United States. Our friends in Japan, Korea have been very supportive on the record. Again, from a strategic standpoint, it would make sense to put U.S. oil in play. Again, what the bill proposes is an open market, not government mandates or any kind of government control, but willing buyer, willing seller through the private marketplace in a transparent fashion. Our oil is the best in the world. These light shale oils are called sweet. They don't have much sulfur. They're easily refined. We would probably get a premium in the world marketplace. And I think it'd be much better to send a barrel of oil with a Texas flag on it as opposed to a tank to exert our influence.
Mr. Chairman, I've watched you over the last few years speak about this issue, preparing a number of members, including colleagues that you have in the Texas delegation, to begin the process of understanding the meaning, the application of this, market forces, among other things. And I will tell you that I've been impressed with not only what you've done, but how you've done it. And I want to, with great respect, to offer a huge bit of gratitude for you for staying after something that you deeply believed in. We've been joined now, the gentleman from Illinois, that my dear friend Bobby Rush. Mr. Rush, the former chairman of the Committee, Energy and Commerce, has given his testimony on what we know as H.R. 702, and we're delighted that you're here to do so, and the gentleman is recognized. Please understand we'd like to get anything you have in writing that we would give to our awesome stenographer, and if you do that before you leave, we'd appreciate the gentleman's recognized.
Thank you so very, very much, Mr. Chairman. I think this is on.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly want to begin by agreeing with you. This is a fine fellow that's sitting next to me here. We have worked together in energy and commerce for almost 2 decades now, maybe even 2 decades now. I found him to be a very resourceful person. I found him to be a person who was willing to challenge the status quo on a number of different levels. He and I have collaborated and conspired against leadership, both Republican and Democratic leadership. So he and I have a kindred spirit.
Excuse me, does that include members of the Rules Committee that he's had?
No, I think that neither one of us have challenged the
So he-
Rules Committee leadership. No,
Everybody but the Rules Committee?
everybody except Rules.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we don't have that much courage, but we got courage to challenge everything else.
Actually, the gentleman yield, I've challenged the Rules Committee on occasion.
Well, let me move over here, Mr. Chairman. I'm not associated with this fellow. All right.
We're trying to give him the
Chairman.
benefit of the doubt, and now he challenges that himself.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm all the ranking member Slaughter and all my colleagues on the Rules Committee for allowing me the opportunity today to testify on H.R. 702, a bill to adapt to changing crude oil market conditions, which was, as indicated earlier, was introduced by my good friend and colleague Joe Barton of Texas. Mr. Chairman, I'm not here to bash the bill before us, and as Mr. Barton can attest, I have been in serious negotiations with his office for the better part of the past couple of months, trying to find a reasonable compromise that would allow me to support this bill. Instead, Mr. Chairman, I'm here today to advocate for an open rule process that would allow Democrats who may be otherwise inclined to possibly vote for this bill if it were amended to reflect priorities and concerns of the minority party. In other words, Mr. Chairman, I ask my colleague, Mr. Martin, and other members who might be strong proponents of lifting the crude oil export ban, to help me to help you, help me to help the constituents of my district and similarly situated districts across our nation, help me to assist all job-seeking Americans by allowing amendments to be entertained on this bill. Mr. Chairman, I doubt there are any members here today under any false illusion that this bill would ever become law as currently drafted in this Congress with President Obama in office. In fact, many on my side are expecting a statement of administration policy vowing a presidential veto of H.R. 702 to come out at any moment now. And it would appear to me, Mr. Chairman, that the most logical way, it just came out. I'm sorry for being a little late. It would appear to me, Mr. Chairman, that the most logical way to improve this bill and help its chances of actually becoming law would be to allow the minority side to offer amendments so that we may have a fair bill, a transparent bill, and some open debate on the issue on the House floor. In fact, I myself submitted an amendment that will provide access and allow minority and women firms to more fully participate in the energy supply chain that would be greatly enhanced if the export ban was lifted. After all, Mr. Chairman, we know there are dozens of sectors ranging from construction to engineering to accounting to trucking to manufacturing and many, many more industries that would be greatly impacted if Congress lifts this ban. My most pressing concern is making sure upfront and from the very beginning that minority firms will be a part of the pipeline and will directly benefit from vendor and contracting opportunity that lifting this ban would create. Mr. Chairman, why not illustrate or insulate the majority party from charges of creating a multi-billion-dollar boondoggle for the energy industry by establishing a program to help underrepresented groups share in the economic opportunities that lifting the ban would create. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, there are other legitimate concerns that members on the minority side have that could be easily addressed by allowing amendments to be debated on the floor. Obviously, the majority has the vote to defeat any and all amendments to the bill, so why not allow for a robust debate on these issues before the American people? So again, I respectfully urge this Rules Committee to offer an open rule on the bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Rush, thank you very much. This committee, as a matter of fact, I just asked one of our great staff guys, I do not recall a specific amendment that was submitted that might have addressed what you were in reference to for minority participation, but I'm going to go back and look at those. Mr. Chairman Barton, when an industry, this industry hires people, you have truck drivers, you have people that get out in I guess the outer reaches of this country to go in and get these, whether it be Wyoming, Northwest Texas, other areas. This helps everybody, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. And Congressman Rush and I have been in discussions or negotiations for a number of months trying to come to a resolution on an amendment that the majority could support. We've come close a number of times, but we've not yet been able to have a total meeting of the minds. But I certainly don't have an opposition if this committee wants to make one of his amendments in order. Select the will of the House.
Okay, and I'm gonna look at that certainly before we.
But if we repeal this ban on crude oil exports to be direct, there will be lots of jobs created, and a lot of those jobs will go to the groups that Congressman Rush has been a champion of for many, many years.
So it would include jobs in Illinois, all over the world, including.
Illinois would probably be one of the top 5 states in terms of job creation,
right,
according to some econometrics.
Right. So, using an old quote, rising tide lifts a lot of boats. 1 million jobs are not designated for any particular or certain group of people, are they?
You'd have, again, the groups that Mr. Rush, I haven't looked at this specific amendment, but similar amendments would help low-income groups, women, minority-owned businesses, some of the inner-city constituency that is part of Chairman Rush's district.
Jobs.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
If I could add this, as you might notice, I'm wearing a collar today, and I've been wearing it for a while now. And in my other line of work, I'm very familiar with good intentions, and I'm wary of good intentions. And I've seen people on Sunday leave and they have the best of intentions, but by Monday morning, I can't even recognize those same people. My point is this, is that without specific language in the law, I kind of feel as though we would be relying on good intentions. And as you know, good intentions might not be something that is meaningful enough and that really carry the very high standard that I think that you and Mr. Barton and other members of this committee want. At the end of the day, we want to see something much more significant and much more manifest than just good intentions. And without it being in the law, you know, I'm afraid that it would be just as many other activities of this Congress where good intentions just wasn't good enough because it didn't have the weight of law behind it.
Yes, sir.
I can tell you if they were awake during his sermon, it would have lasted more than one day. It would have lasted till the next Sunday, so they must have slept through your sermon.
Well, I can't say that, you know, some did, some didn't.
Yes, sir. Well, it's an issue that we should always be concerned about. I just believe that if you look at the huge advantage to our country, that it gets harder to specifically say it can't help everybody. I think
There's no study that shows that it doesn't create. Every study, there have been several dozen studies, they all show positive job creation, they all show positive economic impact. They all show that gasoline prices will remain steady or slightly decline. I mean, there's just no negative downside from an economic standpoint or job creation standpoint to this legislation.
Well, as always, there are groups that have put together numbers that they think that would benefit jobs that would be a benefit of a district. I see New York's 25th district, about 4,500 jobs would be created by this. This is what the guesstimate is and others. Well, I am always concerned about that. Did you want, Mr. Chairman Barton, did you want Mr. Green to be a part of this testimony? Mr. Green? Next panel.
He may
Okay.
not want to be associated.
Well, no, he's, okay, Gene, we're going to do is evidently wait for the next panel, so yes, sir. Trust me, you'll be treated fairly.
Gene Green supported Texas A&M over Mississippi State last week at Kyle Field, so he's a friend.
We sat next to each other for years, and he was always lost.
Yeah.
Last week we did sit next to each other.
Well, we're going to,
But we sat in the same section.
yes, sir. Dr. Burgess?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thanks to our witnesses, both good friends from the Energy and Commerce Committee. Mr. Chairman, we received, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, on the letter from the Office of Management of the Budget that has your name at the top of it and 137 co-sponsors, so I guess it's got my name in there, embedded in there too. And you know, I used to be a student of medical irony when I practiced medicine. I've sort of branched out, and now legislative irony is intriguing to me also. So we have the administration that recently pushed a deal to lift sanctions on the country of Iran so that they will be able to export their crude oil all over the world. But the United States of America can't export its oil. Can you explain that, Mr. Chairman?
Well, first, I'm disappointed in that statement. It does show that they would recommend a veto. We had been led to believe that with some hope that they might at least be neutral. So obviously it's a disappointment, but it is what it is, and you have to respect the president's position. I hope it's not demonstrative. I hope we can get enough votes if we have to overturn a veto. But it is very difficult for me to understand how the president can be opposed to something that would create so many jobs and so much economic opportunity, as Chairman Sessions has pointed out, across the the spectrum of the U.S. economy, not just in the oil states. It has there is really no negative downside to this.
Well, I did want to ask you a question about that, because you said, what year was it that this banned?
1975.
1975. Of course, the Arab oil embargo was 1972 or three.
73.
And
72 and 73.
I am old enough to remember the gasoline lines and old enough to remember President Nixon saying we could only drive 55 miles an hour on the highway in order to conserve gasoline, that we couldn't buy gasoline on Sundays, so we would have to plan accordingly. Is this crude oil export ban, is that related to all of those things I remember about the early 70s?
It was enacted at a time when we were importing 2/3 of our oil, and we had no choice. We had to. It was a necessity. We actually have the capability today to be energy self-sufficient, including oil production. We could produce enough oil in the United States in a given period of time to not have to import any oil, but now we make the economic choice to import oil, primarily from Mexico and Canada, because our refineries have been geared up for the heavier crudes that those two nations tend to produce. But we could produce as much as 20 million barrels of oil a day in the United States within a 5 to 10 year period if we so chose to. We've chosen not to for economic purposes, not because we couldn't. In the 1970s, we had to import oil because we had no choice. We didn't have the capability. We didn't have the technology. They didn't know that they could produce oil from these tight shale formations. When you look at the shale formation, it looks like a block of concrete.
That's my district. I live on top of that
The
concrete.
Barnett Shale. Yeah, so technology and American ingenuity has come a long way since 1975. This is the last remnant of the 70s oil policy or energy policy of scarcity, that we were running out of energy, that we couldn't compete, that we had to reserve what resources we had. We're now the most energy abundant resource country in the world, more so than Saudi Arabia or Russia.
So the world's a very different place.
It is.
From when the oil embargo was enacted. You referenced a barrel of oil with the Texas flag on it.
I should have said the U.S. flag. I missed.
No, you should have said the Texas flag. I think that's entirely appropriate. A year and a half ago, as part of...
Congressman Rush has given me the evil eye.
Well, you referenced the natural gas, and that is not part of our discussion. I was an election monitor for the Helsinki Commission last year for 2 elections in the Ukraine. I thought it was interesting that after their uprising that led to the departure of President Yanukovych back to Russia, they had a memorial at their town square, and at the top of it was a Texas flag. I don't know what the significance was, but perhaps it was because they looked...
Well, the Ukrainians are on the record. They want to import U.S. oil.
Let me just ask you this, because you and I think perhaps Mr. Rush, sat on the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee in 2008. The price of a gallon of gasoline was north of $4, and we were having a rather lengthy investigatory hearing as to the problems that led to the explosion in the price of oil. And I do remember as part of that discussion, there were lots of things that were being talked about, but one of the issues was perhaps we should be increasing our production. And that was largely discounted by people in charge of the hearing, and you and I were in the minority that day, but it was largely discounted because it would take 7 years in order to affect production. I would just point out that that was 7 years ago, last July, that we had that hearing. So in fact, you actually can't, the drill here, drill now, pay less philosophy actually did pay off.
In the year I think this is a true statement. In the year 2000, calendar year 2014, U.S. oil production increased 1 million barrels per day, which was the largest year-to-year increase in the last 100 years.
Well, in short,
It's declining this year because the prices collapsed, but right before prices, went below $50 a barrel, we were on an increase, and these shale formations with the technology that has been developed, the time to develop the well, the time to drill it, the time to bring it into production, just in the last year and a half has been cut in about half. I mean, the technology explosion that nobody talks about have made us the most competitive oil-producing nation in the world.
And enhance productivity.
And it's, the resource base is there. What you don't have now is the price signal. And this bill, if it becomes law, is not a panacea. It doesn't overnight. We don't want prices to go back to $100 a barrel. But that price differential between U.S. oil and the Brent oil, which comes out of the North Sea, which is the benchmark for the world oil market, is about $4 or $5 a barrel. That would go away. And $4 or $5, whether we'd get $2 or $3 more a barrel, or whether they'd come to our price, it'd probably meet somewhere in the middle. But that additional price to U.S. producers is enough to bring some of these rigs back and to create some of these jobs. But it definitely puts us in the driver's seat in the world oil market, because we're the only nation that has the capability to increase production substantially in a reasonably short period of time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time. Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing this bill to the House. It's an important project, and I know you've worked on it for a long time, and I look forward to seeing it on the floor soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Thank you very much. I'd like to, if I can, go back for just a second, Mr. Rush. I told you that I was going to look at the list of amendments that have been submitted. It was rather long, and in particular, I had noted one earlier. It would be number 15. Mr. Cuellar of Texas submitted it. Provides the Department of Energy authorization to continue developing partnerships in the areas of oil and gas exploration, production, midstream, and refining with minority serving institutions, including Hispanic serving institutions and historically black colleges and universities. This amendment would encourage public-private partnerships between the Department of Energy and minority serving institutions.
Mr. Chairman, I would not be in favor of that bill. I might vote for the amendment on the floor, but that wouldn't lead me to vote for the bill. It's a diluted version of my bill. And frankly, Mr. Chairman, it's not. There's no value at all to that for that language to be in the bill, and it's not worth the paper that it's written on. Mr. Chairman, again, I am very much concerned about the difference between good intentions and good results. All right, and my amendment is more results.
Number 23.
Yeah, specific. I'm not sure what the list is on your, what the numbers on your list, but Mr. Cuellar's amendment is really like a shadow to my amendment. Again, I will, if it became a part of the deliberations on the floor, I would support it. But that would not lead me to work for, encourage, and vote for this 702. It would not.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I was in reference to, I had known that I had noted some of these provisions, and I wanted to get back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you much.
Mr. McGovern.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I want to officially ask unanimous consent to submit for the record the statement of administration policy, which says if the president were presented with this bill,
Without objection.
he would veto it. Look, we've had these debates up here 1,000 times. I think it's a bad bill, and I think for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which it runs counter to the U.S. and global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which I think is a big deal. I believe that there's a thing called climate change. I know it's a radical thing to say up here, but nonetheless, I think there's enough science that says that it is a problem. And but be that as it may, I hope that we have a rule that allows a number of amendments to be made in order. I hope we can break this pattern of just bringing closed rules to the floor and locking people out. of the process, but I don't have any questions. I yield back my time.
Could I make a, is it allowed?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Look, I know this isn't the place to have a huge debate, but I would point out that all the analysis in terms of world economy is that demand for crude oil is going to go up, not down. I mean, I think that's a given. So the real question is, whose oil is it going to be? And I would advocate, even if I were, and I'm not, I don't believe in man-made climate change. I'm not going to, you know that.
I do, I know that, yeah,
But,
you know, it's
but
amazing.
I would,
And you know what, when I
if
talk
I,
to,
if I did,
Yeah.
if I shared your position, I would think that you would want to use oil that is produced in a more environmentally safe way, that is of a higher quality, that needs less refining, has less sulfur, and you would rather have U.S. oil be used than Russian oil, where they have almost no environmental rules, and the oil is of a quality that it takes more energy to refine.
I suppose if I believed that there was no hope for any change, then maybe I would see your argument. But I do believe that that we need to that the same old in terms of our energy reliance, not only here in the United States but around the world, is not good for our planet. But there's a philosophical difference there, and you know, it's funny. I mean, you know, I don't know why.
Well,
Something that's so evidence-based is so controversial, but it is. But look, I just, this is coming to the floor, the president's going to veto it if it gets to his desk. You know, we'll go through this exercise, and, you know, and all the while, we're not doing anything, I believe, in any meaningful way to encourage the kind of energy production that I think could make a difference in terms of climate change. But look, you know, I respect you, and I just think it's a bad bill. And
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Excuse me, just a moment, please. The gentleman controls the
yeah,
time.
Mr. Director.
If I might, I want to thank the gentleman for yielding. You know, I'm yesterday in the subcommittee. I'm the ranking member on the subcommittee on energy and power, and in my statement and my questions, I took the members of the other side to task because I absolutely believe that climate change is not a hoax. That there are some things that mankind must do in order to remediate man's effects on our climate, and we have to assume responsibility for it. But I wish that could be the position that I take as the congressman from the 1st Congressional District of Illinois. But I can't go back and face those who are intergenerationally unemployed, those who have no sense of hope for ever attaining a meaningful job, those who are suffering the effects of jobs that have disappeared from their lives, and tell them that here we have a bill that is estimated to bring in $100 billion annually into the American economy, and they cannot or should not benefit from that at all. So I'm caught, you know, I'm caught in betwixt and between. I understand the argument and the fight along with my environmentalist colleagues, but there is some economic realities in the immediate term that I have to address, or I shouldn't even be sitting here. And so out of that concern is a concern where I said, for this time, I'm going to try to do something to help create opportunity, economic opportunities, both in employment and in contracting for my constituents and similarly situated constituents all across the nation. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate the gentleman's comments. I very much want to see more jobs created, too. I wish we were investing in other forms of energy. I think there could be I think there are incredible opportunities out there to create a whole new green industrial revolution, if you will, if we decided to make those choices. I just want to do both. I want to create jobs, and I want to have this planet around for for future generations. And I think we ought to take heed to what Pope Francis said, that we need to be good stewards of our planet, and we haven't been. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman just back his time. Thank you very much. Does the gentleman from Ohio, the gentleman, Mr. Stiver, seek time? The gentleman does not seek time. Does gentleman from Florida is recognized?
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman. You asked Mr. Rush about Mr. Cuellar's two measures. I'd like to ask Chairman Barton whether you are supportive of Henry's, mine and your
I
good
am.
friend. Okay, I just want to make sure about that. Mr. Barton, like Bobby, we've been here quite a while. I recently began a series of conversations with constituents, and I changed the term that has become the fashion here, climate change. I just changed it to climate science. And the thing is, last week, I spoke to nearly 100 members of the Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. And it was shortly after the supermoon. And unfortunately, where I live here in Washington, I couldn't see the supermoon. But in Florida, I've seen 2 other supermoons. And interestingly enough, while the tide over the course of the 52 years that I've lived in Florida comes with the new moon all the time, this particular supermoon brought more of the tide into particularly the Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood area, and soil erosion like many of them had never seen. So I say, you call it anything you want to, but when I went to Fort Lauderdale and the moon would be at its full state, and when the supermoons came, we didn't have as much erosion. So something has changed, and I don't know whether it's the climate or not. I'm not making an argument to you one way or the other. I understand you, but we have to, at some point, echoing Mr. McGovern's feelings, we have to, at some point, begin to invest beyond our lives. And I mean truly beyond our lives. We have to begin, it's hard for us to think 1 year ahead around here, but we have to begin to think really honestly what 50 years will look like at the rate that we're going. And then I fall back and agree with my dear friend and longtime colleague, Mr. Rush, on the need for economic development in communities that have been disadvantaged for a protracted period of time. Also, we're all caught in a twixt and between kind of situation. But I wanted to add that notion regarding the word change versus the need for science regarding things like soil erosion and other kinds of incidents that we're confronted with. I don't think it's, if we use South Carolina as a recent, for example, epic flooding that took place in epic rain. They had never experienced that before, so something changed, and something caused that change. Toward that end, I would hope that here in this institution, we will begin seriously investing while your bill may very well pass and may very well should pass. I would hope we would start investing in solar, wind, thermal, all of the other things. And the other thing we had better get ready for is the water wars that are coming. And I've argued for years about desalination, and I would hope that we would get there, because we are also damaging many of our waterways, and that's troubling and will have consequences. So I just leave that as a thought.
Well, do you want me to comment on that?
Sure, if you will.
First of all, I don't have a problem with talking about climate science as opposed to climate change. And I don't deny that there is change. My issue is cause-effect. I am skeptical that man-made CO2 is a driving, dominant cause of climate change. Now, I'll have a debate on that, but there's no question that the climate is changing, as it always has. With respect to the supermoon, as you know, and most people know, supermoons are when the Earth and the moon are closest together, so you have this, looks to the naked eye, it is a larger moon, so they call it a supermoon. Why the tides in Florida would be unusually high, I'm not a meteorologist or an oceanographer, so I couldn't say. I doubt very seriously, though, that it's because of the amount of CO2 that's gone up in the atmosphere, but I'm not going to say it's not. I just don't know. But I will point out that factually, NASA keeps records of worldwide temperatures. It's not a model. They actually take real temperature everywhere around the world. And in the NASA satellite data, the temperature has been constant or slightly declined for the last 15 years in a row.
Okay, then let me bring something.
That's a fact. That's not a theory.
Let me ask you your thoughts regarding methane gas leaks, unrelated to climate change or science.
Methane gas is a much more potent greenhouse gas than CO2. It's order of magnitude more.
That said, our infrastructure could very well not be able to tolerate some of the things that this bill argues. Do you agree with that, that we have a problem with methane gas leaks in the infrastructure as it is presently situated?
Well, I'm not sure what your definition of problem is. First of all, this is an oil production issue, not a methane gas issue. And if you want to talk about controlling methane gas, you need to begin to control emissions of cattle.
Okay.
They're the most potent source of methane gas emissions,
Yeah, well,
and I'm not sure we're going to control the emissions.
Well, you brought up definitions, and
the rear
perhaps
end
you
of a
can
cattle.
but you brought up definitions. Perhaps you can tell me why there is no definitive definition of restrictions in this particular bill, which would allow, according to Frank Pallone's statement, the possibility that almost anything could fall in the category that you...
Of oil exports?
No, the bill itself.
I don't think there's a lack of definition what oil is.
Okay, all right. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Governor yields back his time. Thank you very much. There's a gentleman from Ohio.
I've changed my mind, Mr.
Seek
Chairman.
time.
I would
The
like to
gentleman's-
seek time slightly.
Gentleman's recognized.
And given what the gentleman from Florida has previously said about Texas, I thought he was going after Texas cattle a minute ago with cow flatulence, but I think,
Don't get me started.
I'll defend Texas.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone there. So to the subcommittee chairman, and I think this came up a little bit, but I'd just like you to address it. And I realize you're on the Energy and Commerce Committee, not the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Right.
But the geopolitical power of our commodity oil, and I'm on the Financial Services Committee, and oil futures are traded on the commodities exchanges. It's clearly considered a commodity, but it's the only commodity I know of we're not allowed to trade internationally.
That's correct.
And this is a Republican policy. I'm not attacking the other party. This comes back to the Ford administration. And I just would like you to talk for a minute about the benefits to the world and the free market and to our allies of us being able to trade that oil if you want to opine on it.
Current world production capability is about 95 million barrels a day. Current world consumption is about 92 million barrels a day. Now, you can give or take a few 100,000 barrels, but we basically have a surplus of supply over demand of about 3 million barrels per day in the world market. The Saudis have some limited capability to increase production. As somebody pointed out, the Iranians are going to be able to export fairly quickly another 1 million barrels a day. The Russians perhaps a little bit, but the only nation in the world that has significant production capability to go up significantly is the United States of America. And we happen to be the only country in the world that can't export crude oil. World demand for oil is going up, not down. In fact, it's increasing more rapidly this year than in any year in the last 5 years because the price has collapsed, and there is, if it costs less to use something, people use more of it. So oil consumption is going up, not down. If we allow U.S. oil to be sold on the world market, we have the capability to quickly, significantly increase our oil production. That's where we get all the economic benefits, the job creation, all of those things. Since we're the only nation in the world that could increase it substantially, it would give us a strategic capability in the world vis-a-vis the Russians and the Arab oil cartel called OPEC. You know, we're the only nation that would have that capability. Right now, we don't, that's a tool that the American president can't use because we can't export oil. But if we remove this restriction, then we could use it. And from a conservative standpoint, we'd do it without having to have government intervention. It would be the hidden hand of the market that in the Wealth of Nations was talked about. Willing buyers overseas would purchase oil from willing sellers in the United States. It would lessen the need for consideration of military intervention. It would strengthen the economic ties between the United States and Central Europe and Asia and South America. I mean, it's a win-win all the way around. Right now, we don't have that capability unless the President directs the Department of Commerce on a case-by-case basis to allow exports for a specific period of time in a specific quantity. If we remove that restriction, then we are in an enhanced position for our values and our strategic position in the world. That, again, is not an opinion, that is a fact.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We need to use our economic power along with our military power and diplomatic power to pursue our interests. This gives us the ability to do that. I appreciate you talking about that. The other thing that I happened to look up when another bill came through here a few weeks ago was the fact that today the only reason we run a trade deficit in NAFTA is because of the oil export ban. We import energy from Canada and from Mexico. Those values approximately equal the exact trade deficit we have. If we were able to export oil, it would help our trade balance abroad in a lot of countries. But that's another thing I wanted to quickly talk about. You may have already addressed this before I got here, and I apologize, I was late. But do you want to talk about the energy revolution that's happened in this country over the last 10 years that does give us the ability to quickly
we've created
expand our
a technology advantage that the rest of the world doesn't have in terms of hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling. Saudi and Russia and the other countries have tried to do it, and they either can't do it at all or they don't do it nearly as well. And in the last year or so, because of the collapse in the price structure, our companies have gotten even better at it so that our competitive advantage has gone up. You can drill a well in about 2/3 of the time that you could 18 months ago. It costs about 30% less, and that technology and that advantage is improving on a month-to-month basis. The market has forced our producers to get better at what they're doing. As an example, in the Permian Basin in West Texas, which is an oil field that has been in existence almost 100 years, in the first 6 months of this year, their average well produced 60% more than it did last year.
wow. And the other thing
That's just
that's huge.
technological revolution that we don't talk about, but it's real.
Yep. Well, I appreciate this, and you already spoke to it, but To the extent that even though oil is considered a commodity, can you speak to the fact that American oil is cleaner and more environmentally protected than a lot of other oil, and therefore if we export more of that, the global environment will be cleaner?
We have this image of oil as this dark black kind of, thick, gunky liquid, and some oil is like that. But the shale oils are called light and sweet, and they're clear, and some of them are so good, so to speak, if that's the right term, that you almost don't have to refine them. In fact, there are people in Texas that are putting in these little mini processors that they run the oil through so that it has been processed, and they're using that as a loophole to export it because it does meet the definition of a processed product. So these shale oils are light and sweet. They're easier to refine. The ability to get more gasoline and aviation fuel is much better than in the heavier, more sour oils from Canada and Mexico and Russia. Now, Saudi has some oil that is almost as good as the United States, but they're one of the few nations that can say that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in terms of being clear about my amendment and where I stand on this bill, I'm for all of the above. I'm for wind, solar, nuclear. I'm for all of it. I'm for green jobs, yellow jobs, gold jobs. I'm for black jobs. I'm for jobs, okay? All I can say in summary is, in terms of my district, those who are seeking opportunity in my district, energy is more than a commodity. It's an opportunity for people in my district, for my constituents, and similarly situated districts across the nation. All right? I can only say, cut us in or cut it out. Thank you.
I appreciate the gentleman from Illinois. It is more than a commodity. It's an opportunity for the entire American populace, and we need to try to maximize jobs in all our districts. And I'll certainly take a look at your amendment here right now. Thank you, and I appreciate the chairman for his time. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Alabama, the gentleman, Mr. Burns, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been listening very carefully to the discussion today. It's been very enlightening. It's very clear that there is high demand in the world for oil. And whatever we think about the climate debate, that demand's not going away. The people in developing countries want/need this oil, and they're going to buy it from somewhere. And why in the world we would cut America off from being able to sell into those markets, since they're going to buy it and use it, I don't understand. So the first argument for this is it's a very strong economic argument. It empowers American producers to sell American product abroad, which not only does great things for balance of payments, but it also does great things for the American workers. And this will produce tens of thousands of jobs in a relatively short period of time, and to produce those jobs for people right now who would love to have them. And I can't think of anything better we could do for the citizens of this country than get them a job, and this will do that. Second reason is the geopolitical one that I think Mr. Stivers did such a great job of talking about. There is a power to this sort of commodity around the world in terms of foreign policy. The Iranians understand that. That's why they wanted the deal so badly, where they could get control of that oil and it could enhance their power in the world. And our president gave it to them. And yet he will deny it to American producers. I find that astonishing. It seems to me totally inconsistent with his role to be the leader of this country that he would do that. There's a third reason, and that is it goes right to the defense interests of the United States of America. Look at some of the worst players in the world that are at odds with us: Russia, Iran, Venezuela. they all use their energy reserves as weapons. We've seen Russia use it in Europe. We see Iran use it, and they're going to use it a lot more in the Middle East. We've seen Venezuela use it in this hemisphere. So it seems to me there's a third reason for this, to make sure that we enhance the defense posture of the United States against these countries that wish us ill by being able to utilize that product to get it to people who are either presently our allies or we could turn into our allies, because we give them something that they'd rather get from us than get from these other countries that wish us ill. So it seems to me there are three pretty strong reasons to do this. And I don't understand why the president would deny that to American producers while he gave it to the Ayatollah. But this is the third instance of this in just the last few months. And the Iran deal, the president gave Iran an advantage, not American citizens. Last week we brought up the Justice for Victims of Iran Act, which would have given a benefit to American citizens that the president wants to stand in the way of. And now this. So I'm beginning to wonder, is the president with the Ayatollah or is the president with the citizens of the United States? It seems to me he's with the Ayatollah. And I think this debate's going to get quickly down to that. And we've got to decide who we're with. We're with the citizens we're here to represent? Or are we here to be with people who are avowed enemies of this country? So I strongly support this piece of legislation, look forward to the rule on it, and I look forward to a spirited debate on this floor and throughout the American public about this issue, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. I will tell you the gentleman said that well, and I appreciate it. Mr. Rush, Mr. Barton, thank you so much for taking time to be here today. We know that this took a chunk out of your afternoon.
I want to make one more. Congressman Hastings asked if I supported the Cuellar amendment. I do. There's also an amendment I believe you're going to receive from Congressman Amish. Amash, and I support that being made in order.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rush, thank you very much. Bobby, good to see you. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. We'll now call the second panel. That will include the gentleman, Mr. Green, the gentleman, Mr. Carbella. Mr. Carbella is here. I notice he has Mr. Adam Wolf with him, one of my former great staff leaders. Mr. Wolf, we're delighted that you're here, providing adult support to Mr. Carbella. Is there anyone else that seeks to be heard on H.R. 702? See none. Gentlemen, welcome. Mr. Green, we're delighted that you're here. You've been up here many times, Mr. Carbella. I don't know how many times you've been here, but this is it. Well, congratulations. Hope you do well enough to get invited back. The way this thing essentially works is that we'd like to ask that anything you brought in writing that you'd leave for our awesome stenographer. Allows her an opportunity to make sure that she gets all your words exactly the way you said them. Secondly, as you see there, Mr. Carbella, that microphone has a green light on it, and we'd like for you to kind of adjust your speaking to where we can all hear you if you need to. Otherwise, we'll just trust that's going to work. Mr. Green, we're delighted that you're here. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the time today and holding the markup. I have two serious issues, and I'm a member of the committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee. When we passed the bill out of committee, I supported the bill with the understanding we would work on some amendments in the process before we got the Rules Committee. We've tried to do that. We haven't come to an agreement, but I have two amendments that I'd like the committee to consider. First, the bill opens up exporting totally and doesn't provide the federal government with an opportunity to partner with the industry in exportation of natural resource. My amendment would allow exports of crude oil. The United States could export crude unless the Secretary of Commerce determines the exports would not be in our national interest. Commerce has a mandate to help U.S. businesses participate in the global marketplace. Under that mandate, Commerce has approved 99% of the export applications. In fact, 138 different times the agency has approved applications for export oil and condensate. I think the best policy of crude oil would be oversight by the Department of Commerce, and I like to see the department continue to issue license exports. I think the department should approve applications quicker
And Commerce should also address some of the burdensome requirements to make the process more efficient. We need to ensure that our natural resource is protected and benefits the United States while enforcing our laws against bad actors. We can achieve all this with an agency that works well, and I urge the committee to adopt that amendment. My concern with this is that I have a very urban district in Houston, but also at any given time in the last 20-plus years represented the 5 refineries on the Houston Ship Channel. Our refineries are doing very well today because of the margins, and two of those refineries are owned, one by Shell and one by Exxon. They're integrated companies. They make most of their revenue from the oil patch, which I support, but also would like to make sure that our refineries are not priced out of the market. That's what this amendment and the next amendment is about. The second one defines that no provision of the law or federal official may restrict the export of crude oil. We need to protect the ability of the president, regardless who that president is, has the authority to stop exports in times of national emergency shortage. And my second amendment, further language in my second amendment is taken directly from Senator Heidi Heitkamp's oil export bill. My amendment would allow the restrictions of crude oil export if the president declared a national emergency, if crude oil was sent to countries with trade sanctions or restrictions, or if the crude oil sustained a significant shortage of very high prices in our country. We need to protect our domestic refining operations. During the 70s, we learned how important it was to produce our own oil. What would it be today if we sent our crude oil to a country, whether it be Venezuela or Middle East, they refined it and sent it back to us? In my area, I like having manufacturing jobs, and those are refineries, and I want to make sure those industries are protected, at manufacturing jobs. That's why I would hope that somebody be minding a store, looking over the shoulder instead of just exporting crude oil, because again, that's a national security issue, and it's also an issue with economics in our own area. But and with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Mr. Cabela, welcome. You're finding out firsthand that you sometimes have to come up here and cool your jets, sit around for a while, but I want you to know that we're delighted that you have taken time to join us today, and your ideas that you want to represent are very open to this committee, and the committee, notwithstanding you have at least one Floridian around here to help you out, but we're delighted that you're here, and the gentleman's now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you correctly stated, this is my first time before the Rules Committee, and it's a true honor. So I appreciate the opportunity to testify, you, your colleagues, and of course my good friend from the state of Florida, Mr. Hastings. First, I'd like to offer my support for the legislation being considered before us, H.R. 702, which would help our country adapt to the changing crude oil market conditions. I am a co-sponsor of this legislation. Over the August district work period, Mr. Chairman, I had the opportunity to visit an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico, and I was able to see firsthand the safety regulations and precautions that have been put in place since the Deepwater Horizon spill back in 2010. All of us who come from Gulf states remember how difficult and, quite frankly, traumatic that experience was. One of the primary topics of discussion during our visit was safety and the environment. And I was glad to learn the industry has put a lot of contingencies in place to make sure we can continue drilling for oil while protecting the environment. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I have joined my friend and colleague, Mr. Delaney of Maryland, in offering a very simple amendment to this bill's findings sections that would state, the United States has reduced its oil consumption over the past decade, and increasing investment in clean energy technology and energy efficiency will lower energy prices, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and increase national security. There's nothing controversial about this statement and this amendment, Mr. Chairman, and it's something I firmly believe to be a positive addition to the bill. While I'm supportive of changing the outdated strategic oil reserve policies of the 1970s and allowing for the further exploration of crude oil, I feel it's also important to note other forms of energy that are benefiting our country's economy, wind, solar, natural gas, and nuclear energy are all contributing greatly to our country's energy independence. And this amendment before us today acknowledges what our country needs, that our country needs to be energy independent in the 21st century. So in short, this is an endorsement of an all-of-the-above energy strategy. We've seen over the last 5-10 years the energy revolution that has taken place in the United States. It's been good for our national security. It's been good for our economy. And this amendment simply recognizes that and encourages us to continue endorsing this all-of-the-above energy strategy that has done so many wonderful things for our economy and for our people. With that, Mr. Chairman, I hope this amendment is ruled in order to the underlying bill, and I yield back.
Mr. Cabell, thank you very much. By the way, I was in Dallas, Texas, as we all go home on the weekend, and had an opportunity to once again fill up at just slightly right at $2 a gallon, and am reminded constantly by many people back home who have to rely on transportation for their jobs, for their children, for taking care of their parents, for doing things. Back in Dallas, I'm close to the disability community, and a number of families actually have larger vehicles. They call those things SUVs. And some people like to find a way not to like them, but they support, in particular, several of my friends who have wheelchair devices attached to them, where the wheelchair comes down, where their child, one of them, now an adult, pretty much an adult, the family's able to participate and bring that family member along with them to activities, and they have had enormous prices in our immediate past, and how every single family in this country can benefit from effective, cost-effective energy prices, how airlines, back in Dallas, Texas, we have two small airlines, Southwest Airlines and American Airlines, how they have benefited with the reduction of prices and found a way to float their boat, so to speak, economically to sustain not only people that are able to fly places and giving them opportunities for jobs and enrichment and family opportunities, but to save their employee base that they have. I'm reminded constantly about this stability to where people can come and go and not stand in lines and not have the threat of being scared and afraid of what may happen tomorrow. The fluctuations of a marketplace happen as easily as shooting war somewhere around the world. And how this, Mr. Cabela, and certainly what Mr. Green describes also as a stability issue for the American citizen, to be able to know that their country can produce those necessary items, as Mr. Cabela aptly exercises his viewpoint of all of the above. All of it contributes to a necessary environmental and economic reality of where we are in the country. I will. And that's where your ability to come here and speak clearly, and Mr. Green's ability to come and speak clearly about how we continue these processes. And lastly, the gentleman, Mr. Rush, was here, and Mr. Barton, talking about how 1 million more jobs. And while there was some difference of perhaps opinion about how that may happen and what may fall as a result of that, it's a rising tide helps all the boats rise. So I want to thank you both. I appreciate you taking time, Mr. Cabela. I know you caught me on the floor and told me you'd be up here, and I think you did a great job today, and I hope you'll come back.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, notwithstanding what my friend from Alabama had to say by way of query as to whether or not the president was with this country or the Ayatollah, and I firmly disagree with that and think it's a bit of hyperbole. But that said, I ask you, Mr. Chairman, does the president get any credit for the lowering of gas prices in the United States?
Thank you. That's a good question. Am I going to give him any credit? Is that the question, or does he get?
I know damn well what you're going to do. I'm just asking.
No. I want to be fair. I want to be fair to the president. The president and I disagree on lots of issues, but the president and I are not adversaries at each other. I mean, I'm not attacking him all day, every day. I want to see us get better. Does the president get credit for this?
Yeah.
I think a marketplace that has become robust gets credit for it, and that's what we're trying to do.
Increasing gas leases or exploration leases by this administration doesn't factor into any of this?
It is, let me tell you, that's a very good question. We've heard lots of testimony on that. I think that the abundance of leases on non-government, non-federal government land has shown that it was the key difference.
Right. Well, I do recall very vividly when the prices were going up, everybody was blaming our president, at least on your side. And I understand all those dynamics. Thank you for you.
Yes, sir. And the one last thing I'd say, and I know you didn't ask this, I rarely have I seen a president that wants to get credit on both sides of the issue. And he wants to get credit for not doing it or doing it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, different than you, and I'm much older than you, every president that I've seen has that same determination.
Well, I watched one guy who, his name is George W. Bush, and he wanted to protect this country and said he was going to keep us from getting attacked again. But do not ever think that this gentleman and I don't enjoy the time that we have, and he makes good points at me, and I wish I could find a way to make a good point at him. But I thank you very much, Judge Hastings, for that observation. The gentleman from the Oil Rich State of Oklahoma, the gentleman that's
who represents the two largest oil-producing counties in Oklahoma.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I'm glad we could end on a note of agreement with my good friend from Florida, because up to that point, we were moving in different directions. He's certainly right about a tendency, frankly, not just of presidents, but all politicians, ourselves included, to try and take as much credit as we can. The polls show how unsuccessful we've all been at that. But this is one, and I don't ever take issue with my friend in terms of the spirit of his remarks, but this is one I actually do disagree very profoundly. Look, I represent, as my friend, the chairman does, as my friend from Texas does, a district that is heavily connected to the domestic energy industry and foreign. Frankly, we do a lot of our companies drill overseas. A lot of them export oil manufacturing equipment and what have you. So it's a big part of our economy. And honestly, this administration has been unremittingly hostile to that industry. And if it had done so much to help them, I think the president would do better in energy-producing states and areas. And I think we just looked at a poll, the people that know the industry do not think he's been remotely helpful, and the people that work in it, and that's millions of Americans. But they have delivered in spite of, not because of the administration, and we are enjoying what the market has yielded. And again, as the chairman implied, if you compare leases and activity on private land versus federally owned land, it's down pretty dramatically on federal lands. It's up very substantially in the private sector. And so, again, that industry has delivered enormous benefits to the American people directly and indirectly, and now, frankly, is suffering almost. Not almost is. In my area, we're laying off hundreds of people now because we are producing so much more petroleum, and we have fundamentally changed the dynamics of the marketplace in a way that I certainly wouldn't have expected. I don't think the president anticipated. I don't think the government anticipated. It's just the ingenuity and hard work of the people in this industry that got it done. And they, by the way, I don't hear them complaining a lot about the ups and downs of the free market. They understand. I was talking to the CEO of one of our largest companies, and he was one of the founders of it. And he told me, Tom, you just have to understand in the energy industry, you've got to, if you don't plan for volatility, you're not going to be in business very long. That's the nature of our business. So they will go through it, but we shouldn't make it harder for them. And the idea that we would, sit here and allow Iran to export petroleum and not allow Americans. We're the only country in the world, I'm informed, that does not allow petroleum, the only one. That's just a mistake. Let the market work, and the people that are in it won't complain. My friend from Texas who testified has a very good point, though. I also have a couple of refineries in my district, and I understand the importance and trying to be careful in that regard, because we need a completely functioning energy industry, and the refining industry is a huge part of that. My friend from Florida makes say, I have multiple wind farms in my district. I'm a big believer in renewable energy. We have biomass in our area. So, been a proponent of the tax credit for the wind industry. I think it's a very important, investment tool. We now get 17% of our electricity in Oklahoma from wind-driven power. So there you go. But so to my friend from Florida's point, Mr. Cabello, that he's correct. And all of the above energy strategy is the right approach. But count me as a skeptic to think the president has been helpful in that regard where carbon-based energy is concerned, because he hasn't. But this is a really great underlying piece of bill. I'm sorry I missed it. I value your amendments. I think they're both very thoughtful amendments and worth the very, very serious consideration of this deal. So I look forward to this passage. And the other thing I look forward to, and I know there'll be partisan divisions to some degree, but this is actually going to be a bipartisan bill. My friends here at this panel indicate that there are a lot of Democrats and a lot of Republicans that agree on this industry, and hopefully we'll work it through the process. We'll see what happens on the other side. And around here, magically, sometimes legislation doesn't arrive in its purest form. It gets attached to something else. So if the president can't support it, and I'm very disappointed in his statement, because I think it's frankly factually incorrect, and I think more importantly bad policy for the country. Perhaps we can marry it with something that he likes better. Around here, teaspoon of sugar makes the medicine go down. So maybe we can find something and get it. But I'm very pleased with you guys' contribution, what you've done. I know how hard you've worked on this in energy and commerce to get us to this point. And I know you've tried to bring us to consensus and by addressing some important concerns that relate to this bill. And I think those are worthy of serious consideration. So just thank both of you for being here. I really don't have a lot of questions. I just had to poke my friend from Florida a little bit and had to disagree with my president a great deal on this. But I think this is one where we're pursuing the right policy, and it will employ thousands of people. And it will come at a time when, frankly, we're having layoffs and difficulties in that industry. And we should remember that. We shouldn't, again, give to the Iranians what we're not going to give to the Texans, the Oklahomans, Louisiana, the people from Wyoming, big industry in California, Western Pennsylvania. This is now not just a few states. This is really important, in Ohio, a lot of other places. So I think it's a big step in the right direction. Applaud your work on it. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and I see the gentlelady from Texas has joined us. I'd invite Ms. Jackson Lee up to the table to be a part of this panel. Ms. Jackson Lee, as you know, any prepared comments you have, if you leave those with us, we will have those entered for the record, but the committee would welcome your testimony on any of your amendments or any other amendments you'd like to speak about today.
I thank you so very much, and let me indicate my appreciation for my colleagues here. Having read their amendments, I hope we will be working together. I think they are, as well, very thoughtful and important amendments. This is a bill that may not have as its definition the creation of jobs, but I believe it is. Representing a number of energy companies I've seen over the last couple of months, a sizable number of layoffs. I also would make the point that this bill would be helpful in the defense of the U.S. so that potential U.S. allies are not beholden to other individuals when they need energy resources. And I hope my amendments will be considered in a thoughtful manner, and I hope that we will find common ground when we go to the floor to have to vote on these. Let me give you my 4 amendments. My first amendment, number 19, requires that the lifted ban to be assessed after 10 years and directs the Secretaries of Energy and Commerce to work together to review the impact of lifting the ban as it relates to promoting U.S. energy and national security and produce a report to such findings. I think that would be enormously helpful to us. My number 20 amendment directs the Secretaries of Energy and Commerce to work together on submitting a report within 180 days. And let me combine number 20 and 21 as it relates to the opportunities created for small and minority businesses in the U.S. while promoting energy independence and national security. And that would be included as well in a report on the impact on women and veterans, particularly as it relates to their businesses, what opportunities. We may see a vast range of opportunities being created. My last amendment directs the Secretaries of Energy and Commerce to produce a report within 180 days on how 6 months, how adapting to the changing crude oil market conditions will benefit the United States and facilitate opportunities in STEM and innovation and educational opportunities. Collaborative to be able to take the idea of a somewhat changed energy concept that has been around for a very long time and have them impact many of the citizens here in the United States. So I ask my colleagues to consider these amendments. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. To my friend from Florida, I tell you, I'm glad that you brought your amendment today. I'll point out it's 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat leading that amendment. I don't tell you that because it's noteworthy around here. I tell you that because I think it's noteworthy back home. If you don't come from a district with lots of farms and a priority on clean water and clean air, I don't know where you are coming from. I think we all share that among 435 folks, but that all of the above strategy that not just is good for the environment, but supports our national security priorities. It makes me proud that that is something that folks count on our Democratic friends to lead on, but something that Republicans are leading on as well. I'm grateful to you for that. Mr. Green, you're one of my favorite members here. You don't know that. I admire you from afar, but I want to ask you a serious question about the amendments you propose, because I know they come from the heart. I don't want to see your refineries closed down either. If I don't think we'll ever get one reopened. If it closes down, I want them all running, and I want them running at 100% for the rest of my life cycle. But we talk so often amongst ourselves about delegating responsibility to executive branch agencies. You've been a member of this institution for a long time, and what I would say to you is when folks talk to me about the glory days of this institution, they talk about it in precisely the terms that your amendments seek to solve, that we suddenly find ourselves in a national security situation, so we move a bill quickly to shut off those exports. We pass it, and the president signs it, and it becomes a new law of the land. We see unhealthy volatility in the refinery industry, so we move a bill quickly that suspends these exports for 12 months. We send that bill to the president signs it, and we restore a predictability to the industry. Why is it that as you seek to solve what I would argue or seek to achieve what I would argue are common goals, you seek to achieve it through executive branch waiver authority as opposed to through legislative branch legislative authority?
Well, because simply, as you know, it takes us a long time in the House or the Senate to actually put something together. Historically, though, since 1975, Department of Commerce has had the ability to allow for exports. Condensate, the previous panel talked about it. They've never denied a permit. Now, condensate is a short term for a little bit of refinery, not much. And you can do that with a lighter sweet oil from South Texas that we're getting out of Eagle Ford. The problem I have is that I want to export because I also represent a whole lot of those folks who have been laid off by these service companies. I represent employees of Halliburton, Baker Hughes, Honeywell. In fact, I was doing a plant tour a few months ago, and the day before they announced they were going to lay off 5,000 people, and I told my chief of staff, I said, this is not going to be a nice day to go visit there. But I don't have any problem with exporting. I just want to make sure we recognize that there's an economic issue, but also a national offense. And I'll say one story. In 2008, when Hurricane Ike hit the Houston area, it came right up Galveston Bay, shut down our refineries in the Houston area, our 5 we have on the Houston Ship Channel. And we met the mayor, the county judge, all the elected officials met every morning at 8 o'clock to see how we could get the power back on. They had their own generated power, but they can't run a refinery without the grid. And so one of those early mornings, I saw a vice president from Continental Airlines at that time show up, and then an Air Force general. And I went over to him and said, "Why are y'all here?" Continental said, "We don't lighter our planes out of Houston. We fill them up there." And this is the first time we've had to do it. The Air Force general from San Antonio said, "I've been coming over because we buy a whole lot of what the aviation fuel that you produce, the Shell refinery at the different refineries." And he said, "We need those refineries back up for our national security." And that's why I would like to have, I want to export, but I also want to make sure we don't disincentive the expansion we've seen in our refineries. And I hope, Congressman Cole, you've seen we've seen expansions. The margins are great. They're hiring people. I don't want to lose that because those are manufacturing jobs to me. We can manufacture computers, but we manufacture refined products that we can sell to the rest of the world.
I tell constituents back home who want to talk about term limits that 12 years of a bad congressman is 10 years too long, but the Constitution allows us to get rid of them after 2 years. We shouldn't settle for 12. I would tell you that waiver authority that we give to the executive branch falls in that same category for me. We ought to be able to work quickly, swiftly, collaboratively here, and we don't. And your amendments recognize those failures that we don't. My colleague from Florida and I often sit together and say if they just put the two of us in charge of this place for a while, we could sort out most of what ails this country. I suspect that's true of any two of us here. I may have to oppose your amendments on Article 1, Article 2 grounds, but I want you to know I support your goals. And when the time comes that that trigger needs to be activated, I hope you'll put me on the list of folks that you come to try to move quickly to address those very concerns that you've raised. Does the gentleman from Florida seek time?
Yes, I do.
Gentleman from Florida.
Firstly, I support all of the amendments. I echo the sentiments of my friend from Oklahoma. I thought that and think that they are very thoughtful. I want to go on record supporting Mr. Capuello's amendments on all of the above. And Gene and I have been here together a long time, and he has always been a balance wheel for this particular sector. And I wanted to ask you one question, Gene, and that is when, and I really am asking for information, when was the last time that a new refinery has been built that you know of?
Well, in my area, we've expanded our refineries
right.
Substantially over the last 20 years because there have been a loss of smaller refineries, inefficient ones, the standards change, economics, and I had one refinery in the 90s that the family who owned it, they actually owned 2 refineries. They just got tired of owning refineries, so they didn't keep it up on it's a business, it's a manufacturing facility, and if you don't continue to put money into it, you won't get money back out of it. And we actually had a group of investors who bought it from them, brought them up to standard, both with EPA, but also the efficiencies. And it ended up that company who brought it back now, the only asset that Petrobras, a Brazilian oil company, owns in the United States is a refinery in our district. And their margins are very well. I don't know where they get their crude oil. I don't think they would bring it from Brazil when we have a whole lot from Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana. But I've watched refineries over the years, and we've expanded a lot of our refineries. Now, we're actually exporting a lot of our product because our country is not using all the low sulfur diesel that we can produce.
I got you.
But there have been shutdowns, but in our area, they've expanded them. And they expand my job base every time.
That's good to know. Just to, I don't think anybody in here, perhaps visitors might not know my bona fides on the Iran agreement that just passed through the House. I voted against it, and I had a lot of reasons to vote against it. But my friend from Alabama and Oklahoma make very compelling arguments regarding the fact, and I need to check into it for myself, that this is the only country that does not permit the exportation of crude oil. That's something that gives me a great deal of angst, not with reference to anything other than it just simply does not make any sense. So to that extent, I commend both of them. And I would only say to my friend from Oklahoma, I'm watching Oklahoma rise, but I would urge him to pay attention to the Florida and FSU teams, because there may be some meetings coming up sometime down the road. Never mind about that Georgia-Florida cocktail party. I don't want to hear about that.
Speaking of teams with meetings coming, the gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to commend the gentleman from Florida for his language and ask him a couple questions if I could. Do you find anything in this amendment to be contrary to an all-of-the-above energy policy?
No, all the contrary. It's an endorsement of an all-of-the-above energy strategy. The type of energy we're promoting in the underlying legislation, but also all the other types of energy that have helped us become truly energy independent as we're on the path to becoming.
And, you know, clearly we are investing in efficiency standards, in clean energy technology, but do you believe the internal combustion engine is going to disappear anytime soon, Mr. Cabello?
I don't think so.
I don't either. So I appreciate this lifting the export ban to help make sure that our allies and friends around the world can have access to American energy that comes without strings attached.
I thank the gentleman, and I remind everyone, the engine you mentioned is becoming more efficient itself, so it's part of the solution, too.
Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Alabama.
Yes, sir. This is really more of an informational question. Mr. Green, you have two different amendments that would each be a new Section 7. And Ms. Lee, you have 4 different amendments that would each be a new district, Section 7. Can't have 6 different versions of Section 7. We got to pick one. And I know y'all not necessarily working together, so Mr. Green, I ask you first, which of your 2 versions do you prefer? You can't do both. Which one do you want?
Well, I would like it to be 7 and 8 sections then, because both amendments I think are important, because one, like I said, one is what Senator Heitkamp is doing, and the other one is actually giving the authority to Commerce Department to just mind the store, as I call it, just so we don't export to where we.
So you intend these to be 2 separate additional.
They're 2 separate amendments. Yes.
Okay, that clarifies that. Ms. Lee, what about you?
My purpose is to, again, have the combination of Secretaries of Energy and Commerce to work together. Yes, I view them as 2 separate amendments, and if we have to create a Section 8, and I'd like, in particular, for my amendment number 19 to be made in order.
So you prefer 19 to 20, 21, and 22?
Some would always say, have your candy and eat it too. I prefer 19 in order, but if you're generous, I think the one dealing with the opportunities for small and minority businesses is a very key element to understanding the full impact of this legislation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. I want to thank this panel for being here with us today and dismiss this panel. This closes the hearing portion of H.R. 702. And with that, I would advise my members that we will be in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
Testing, testing.
7. Yeah.
I think he's emailing Miles to see if Ms. Slaughter's coming.
But Jim said go ahead.
We got all the numbers we need. Yeah, we do. I think it's, yeah.
Rules Committee will come to order, and thank you so much for rejoining us after the intervening votes. Chairman will now be in receipt of a motion from the gentlewoman, the young chairman from Oklahoma.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 538, the Native American Energy Act, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for the purpose of amendment, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee print 114-30 and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those further amendments printed in Part A of the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in Part A of the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2 of the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 702 to adapt to changing crude oil market conditions under a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order as original text for the purpose of amendment, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee print 114-29 and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes in order only those further amendments printed in Part B of the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and unopponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand of division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in Part B of the report. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've now heard the motion from the gentleman from Oklahoma. Is there an amendment or discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman's recognized.
I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee grant H.R. 702 and H.R. 538 each an open rule so that all members can have the opportunity to offer amendments on the floor. I think on one of them, 19 amendments were blocked, and another, at least 3 were blocked, and then this obviously prevents people from offering amendments that they may want to offer that they didn't bring before the Rules Committee. So I would urge my colleagues to vote yes on this open rule.
Thank you very much. The gentleman has seen the number of amendments that were made in order, and I, as chairman of the committee, am proud of what we've done as a further discussion. Seeing none, the vote will now be on the McGovern amendment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Noes have it, noes have it.
As for roll call?
Gentleman asks for a roll call vote.
Ms. Fox, Mr. Cole.
No.
Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Stivers. Mr. Stivers, no. Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins, no. Mr. Byrne. Mr. Newhouse. Mr. Newhouse, no. Ms. Slaughter. Mr. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings. Mr. Polis. Mr. Chairman.
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk report the total.
1 yea and 7 nays.
It sounded closer to that.
The amendment's not agreed to, not agreed to. For a minute or discussion. Seeing none, the vote will now be on the motion from the gentleman from Oklahoma. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it, ayes have it. And accordingly, the gentleman, Mr. Byrne, from the great state of Alabama, will be handling this.
And Mr. Hastings for the minority.
And Mr. Hastings from Florida will be handling this for the minority. We have spent a lot of time up here this week, and I appreciate the diligence that was set forth, and I want you to know that you should go forth and enjoy yourself. We appear to be done with our work for the week. Thank you very much. Tom, thank you.